Hey guys and girls, how you going? Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate your time, but we've got some exciting things to talk about today. There's been some wonderful new Nikon releases, which I would love to talk to you about and explain and go through all the specs and details and applications. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the new release of the new ZF camera. It's a full frame 24 megapixel, a lovely styled retro camera. Very much in the theme of the ZFC. Now, you know, I've had the ZFC and I had it for some time, and I was shooting a lot of my YouTube videos with it for some time, maybe a year or so. And eventually I decided to move on from it, not because it was faulty or bad or didn't look good, simply because I didn't like the option of the button layouts in practical real world use. So yes, they all look beautiful and they function fine, but if you're swapping from a Z7 to a ZFC or now a ZF to say a Z8, because the button layouts are different, it becomes very inconvenient to remember what does what and why and how when you're in a pinch and a hurry to get on with the job. So if you had, for example, a ZFC as your crop sensor camera, and then you had a ZF complementing that, and they're both in that same retro style with the same button layouts, they would work beautifully together. It's a great combination of two cameras. And the same with a Z9, for example, or maybe a Z6 or something like that. They're so similar in their structure and layout, it's very easy to flick from one to another. But with something like a ZF or retro style camera, and then a new modern contemporary camera, it just doesn't seem to really work, as I found anyway, in real world scenario. So that's the only reason I got rid of my ZFC, and that wasn't because it was bad. It actually performed extremely well, took great photos, and the video and the follow focus of the video was brilliant. And the flip out screen, how useful was that? It was great for either vlogging and or doing videos like this in YouTube, where you no longer need a monitor that I'm using right now. You just flip the screen out and you can see what you're doing. So that was a great camera, really, but just didn't suit me in a practical application way. With this ZF, it'd be a similar problem for me. I'd probably never buy it again because I'm buying these modern contemporary cameras, and the switching back and forth would drive me balmy, I'm sure of it. But that doesn't mean that it's not a great camera to purchase. So as I say, if you're into that retro styling, as I was, I did find it very attractive. And if you like using that and you're quite happy with the button layout and dials, I highly recommend you get it because I think it's gorgeous. A beautiful looking camera, functions very well. I even like the fact that the new buttons on the top of the dials are made of brass. That gives it a bit of dignity and old world quality too, doesn't it? So I think this is all very interesting. They've also kept the idea of the flip out screen, which I think is fantastic. So it keeps all the vloggers happy, and videographers as well can utilize that and find it very handy. So there are a lot of features in it that are quite impressive. But the most impressive feature, the thing that's really turning heads and catching my attention, is the fact that it's the first of the smaller budget cameras that has the XP7 processor. That is the same processor in the Z9 and the Z8. So you're really getting an amazing bang for your buck bargain in that. So the fact that it's economically very affordable, it's about $3,200 Australian, about $2,000, a little bit more maybe US. It's a very affordable camera, right up there with the Z6 in its price. So that's a very affordable camera and a very good value for money package. You get all those features that say a Z6 had, or most of them, and you also get this wonderful autofocus with the new processor. Well, that's amazing, great bargain. Now I know I had the Z6 one, and in fact I've still got one. I'm using it right now to record with. I use that because it's a very simple camera and awesome to switch back and forth between these two contemporary style cameras with the button layouts. So I'm using that for videoing right now, and there's certainly nothing wrong with the Z6s or the Z7s. I've owned all of them and they're all terrific. I've got rid of mine because I got the Z9, so I didn't need a Z7 anymore. I've already got the 45 megapixels here, so I didn't need two of the same sort of configuration in that way. But I've kept the Z6 because of its wonderful video features. It's downsampled 6K down to 4K, and that's exactly what this camera will be doing too. So the ZF will be a full frame camera like the Z6, and it will be downsampling from 6K to 4K should you want it, which gives you an oversampled image, and that's a beautiful video quality. So that's really amazing. Plus you get the XP7's autofocus performance and options for upgrading, which is very important to consider. You see, when you pull this thing out of the box, the ZF, it may be a little bit average in some areas. You might think, oh, I wish I'd improved this, or they come good on that, or they include this feature, and right now you might feel that you're a little bit shortchanged or disappointed. But keep in mind that's exactly how people felt when they got the Z9. Yeah, that was quite spectacular, but it was missing some features and various options that they would have liked. But over time, you've got your firmware 2, your firmware 3.0, your firmware 4.0, and over, say, a year or more, you've got all the features you wanted, plus some you didn't even know you wanted. And this is exactly what they'll do with this camera too. Because it has the new processor, just as the Z8 and the Z9 has, it is upgradable now. It is not like the old Z6-1 and Z6-2s, which couldn't be upgraded because the processing power just wasn't there to do anything. This here now, they can. So you're no longer trapped in a cycle of endlessly hoping and praying for an update that probably never comes, which is exactly why I sold my Z6 and Z7 too. Not because they were bad cameras as such, but they were never going to be upgraded to the level of modern contemporary cameras. That hit their peak, and that's as far as they were going to go. Nikon knew that, and that's why they're now going to release new camera line with the Speed 7 processor, that it can be upgraded. And this ZF certainly comes into that category. So I'm very excited, not only for what it is now, but what it can become in the future. So that's something interesting to consider. It's sort of future-proofed, if you like, which is interesting when you consider it's a retro-style camera, but it's actually built to be suitable for the future. That's quite ironic and funny, isn't it? So apart from that, what are some other features we'd like to talk about with this camera? Well, there's obviously the antique retro styling, which is very beautiful. As I mentioned, it has the brass buttons underneath, so even though they're black on top, they're brass under, and that gives a bit of robustness and, you know, rust protection and so on. Other features I like about it is the flip-out screen, which is very exciting. Gives a lot of versatile options. Some pros don't like flip-out screens. They reckon they break too easy or something, but yeah, I've never experienced that. I had no breakages with my ZFC, so the ZF I don't believe will break any easier. So I think it's a great option to have it. If you can have it, it's a terrific option to have. What it shows us a lot is the thinking for your clients. So people have cried out for cameras like this that have all these options, and now you've got one that's affordable. So we should be very happy about that and no more complaining. So I'm sorry if you've stuck with your Z6 and Z7 IIs, but just you can do what I did, and that is just simply sell them and put that money towards something like maybe the ZF if it suits you. Now personally, I'm very excited about the Z6 Mark III. That's certainly something I would be saving up for or waiting for. I imagine at the end of the year. So you see, really what you see in this camera, the ZF that they're showing us now, is that they are fully capable of putting the Speed 7 processor into a Z6 and still keeping it affordable and giving you great video and photo features at an affordable cost. So we know that it's not impossible now just by the ZF alone. What we want though, or I should say I'm being rude, what I want is I can't put up with the idea of the SD cards. That's the only downside really that really is like a deal breaker. So even the button layout you could work around, but I can't deal with the SD card. Not because they don't work. Using SD cards in DSLRs for years and they function fine. In fact, the ZFC used SD cards and they function fine. But understand why they function fine and why they were in those cameras. They're in those cameras because of the room. They make them very small and thin like the old stock film cameras were. And of course that leaves no room for your XQD cards or your CF Express cards. So because they're a much bigger, chunkier card, there's no room to sort of fit them in the camera anywhere. The Z6 and Z7 bodies, however, don't have that problem. They already have 2 card slots in that space, so we know that the Z6 III or Z7 III will still have a CF Express card, and they'll still have a backup of an SD card if you want it. So that's the minimum that they will have. They may surprise us and put 2 CF Express cards in it. I doubt it, because the Z8 didn't get it. So in that case, it's most likely they'll stay with the same configuration. But don't underestimate how important this CF Express card is in the operation of the camera. So you can have the best processor in the world. You could have your XP7. You could have your 2 XP7s or an XP8. None of that makes any difference if the card can't transfer the information and store it properly. So there's limitations with SD cards in its capacity. There are limitations in its speed, in transfer and read and write speed. So the best SD cards they have, at least at the moment, are around 300 read-write speed. I think that's the Sony Tough cards are doing something like that, and I have those. But if you look at a CF Express card, you can get up to 1,700 speed, and now they're just starting to release a new second generation version of the CF Express cards that are reading up to 3,500 megabytes per second. So that's like incredible speed. So there where the future is. SD cards, well, at the moment we just don't know. Maybe they will release a second generation of them that now UH2 generation 2, and maybe they will be faster, up to maybe 500 megabytes per second. But there's still always going to be a quarter of the speed of an XQD, the CF Express card reader. And so for that, no matter how many upgrades you try and place into that camera, it's actually the memory cards that are going to hold it back in its ultimate performance. So for me, that was not future-proofing it, and that sort of made it a little bit of a downer for me. So that's why I'm going to be personally waiting for similar features, but in the Z6 Mark III. I'd rather wait another 3 to 6 months for that camera to come out with a CF Express reader inside it, card, than have something now with an SD card that really limits it for the future. So the processor is capable of upgrading. The cards at the moment, well, as far as we're aware, they're not. So I have to deal with what is now, not what might be in the future. And I know that we have, with CF Express card reading, we have ultimate upgradability and memory transfer. And that's where I'm going to stay with. So I still love this idea of this ZF camera. I think it's a beautiful looking camera. I think it has a great niche market for many people who like that retro styling. And maybe they just don't care about ultimate performance. Look, if you're going out and you're just taking some photos with your friends, you take some odd video here and there of the family, then it's perfectly fine. It'll suit every need that you have into that scenario. But if you're a working professional, maybe a wedding photographer, event photographer, sports action, then no, it's probably not going to do it for you. Really, I think solely because of the memory cards. That's going to hold you up and be inconvenient. But that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to tell you what you have to do or what you need or what your circumstances are. But for me, the Z6 Mark III, that's the one I'll be waiting out for. I think that's going to be really exciting. So enough speculation on Z6 IIIs because we don't know anything about that really yet. We're only getting some hints and clues from the ZF of what's possible. So something else I'd like to talk to you about now, and that is a lens. So here's a lens that I've had in the past for some time. And I'll just take it off the camera so you can get a good exclusive look at it. And here it is, it's the little 28mm. We're talking about retro styling, of course, aren't we? And this is the retro style lens. It's the 28mm 2.8. And it's a great little compact, well, it's a plastic mounted lens, but it's still, because it's so light, why would you need a metal mount? You don't need strength to mount something that doesn't weigh anything. So this is a great little retro style lens I find for using with my Z9, and particularly so into the video specs. So that's what I use it for. So I put it on my video rig. Now this rig I've had a video in the past about, and I'll just show you a little bit more about it because I've actually been practically using it. I used it on 2 festivals. So I made a video on a Japanese festival called Matsuri, and I've been to this festival in the past, and I knew there that there was a lot of opportunities for videoing, and I wanted to test out the Z9 and the rig and see how it went. I also went to the Comic-Con convention, which is all cosplay and superhero. And that was a fantastic event again for doing video. And I've got a video up, of course, online of these 2 festivals. If you want to watch the whole 10 minutes or so of these videos, you can. But right now I'm just going to summarize my experience with them and doing video. And I found that this rig worked extremely well and was extremely portable and comfortable. Now at the time, what I was using was something very similar to this. That's a 35mm. Let me just find here the right one. That's the 50. Sorry, I got so many of these lenses. The 24, that was the one I was using. So I was using the 24mm lens here with the FTZ adapter Mark II. And what I found was happening was it was quite a big chunky unit. So when you compare the two together, you see the little lens there? Well, I didn't have that at the time. I've only just got that this week. But in comparison, you can see it's quite a bigger, chunkier, heavier lens. Now it works beautifully because it's f1.4, so with video it gives a beautiful shallow depth of field, and at 24mm is quite wide. I have a 35 version as well if I want something a little bit longer, but either way I thought, what do you know what I need to do? I've had this lens before. When I had the ZFC I had this lens. I sold both of them as a kit together. But I found that with video, I find that the Z9 is quite heavy. So if I can lose some weight by having a very light compact lens, then that's a real bargain and a bonus for me. And so that's what I've decided to do. I've decided to acquire the lens back again. I got it in a retro styling. That's just how it came at the time. I actually bought it second hand. You know, I'm always buying second hand things to save money. This one here I bought second hand from Ted's Cameras. It's a local camera store here in Australia. They were selling some second hand goods on special, and I got it for $300 Australian, about $200 US. So that was about a, I don't know, 30% saving off new. It was coming from a camera store, it was reliable, and I know it was in great condition. Someone's just decided they didn't want it and traded it in for something else. Well, that's their loss and my benefit. So I got a bargain and I'm quite happy with it. But there's several reasons I've got this lens. One is the focal length. 28mm was great because it was exactly in between the two other lenses I was using for video. I was using the 24 and the 35. And so what is 28? Well, it's pretty much right in the center of those two. Now, it's not as wide an aperture as these are 1.4 lenses, and this one here is a 2.8, but still more than adequate for most of the video work. After all, we're not doing just still portraits here, we are doing moving subjects, so having a 2.8 is more than acceptable. In fact, it's a pro standard 2.8, so no compromise there really. But the beauty of it was the lightweightness. Not only is it sharp and it's light and it's a high quality looking unit, but the beauty of it is it's so compact and small. Now, how does that help? That helped immensely when it came to storage. When I'm going back and forth between photos and video, which I've mentioned I do a lot before, I can have one bag where my entire video rig is just sitting in that little saddle bag. And then I can have my Z6 with a portrait lens on, something like a 50 1.4 or this 85 1.4, and I can use that for portraits. And then I've got one thing for photos, one thing for video, and I'm not having to muck around as far as changing lenses and changing configurations and taking off handles. And I can just leave this thing alone as a video rig, leave the other camera with the prime lens on as a photo rig. One bag got the photo camera, one bag's got the video camera, left or right, and I can just pull it out and film, pull it out and shoot the photo, and there's no mucking around. And that was really important when you're on the go. So something like a video situation at a wedding where you're doing video but you want to take some photos, it's a convention perhaps, you don't know what they're going to ask or what you're going to want to do at the spontaneous situation of the moment. This is where that sort of option really comes in handy. So let me just illustrate what I'm talking about when I'm discussing this idea of compactness. So I'm going to show you my little camera bag here. This is a little saddle bag. As you can see there, I'll just try and get the light in there so you can see what's going on. It's just a simple configuration. It's basically just a big empty cavity that's rectangular. And I would have often partitions in this, maybe 2 or 3 partitions, and place lenses in it. And that was always what I had it before. So that way I'd have one little camera bag, and then I could just swap the lenses in and out of this saddle bag, and that made it very easy to transport a couple of different lenses. But now what I use it for is my video rig. So I'll have this over the side of myself. So I'll just illustrate so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll have it over my shoulder, like this, and I'll hold it up here so you can see, so it would be to my side in a comfortable height. And just with some Velcro, I can open it up. And now when I want to put my video rig, this entire collected video rig together, I can just slot it in the camera bag, and in it goes. And it fits in there beautifully. Now you have a look at that, how well that fits in. See, it fits in there beautifully tidy. I have that, I just have the flap over like this, and then when I want to do some video, it's just open the flap up, pull the whole unit out, and start filming. And off you go. And when I want to put it away again, just straight back into the camera bag. Very quick and easy. It fits perfectly. It's actually just the perfect fit for me. So, yeah, you do what suits you, and this perfectly suits me. And I'm loving the fact that it's so compact. And you know, the only reason I can do that is because of that little lens. So that little 28mm lens, little compact pancake lens as you see it here, enables me to put it into the camera bag. Where when I had something this long on the front of the lens, there's no way it would fit in the camera bag at any angle. And it was just a damn nuisance having to take it on, take it off, take it off, take it on, off. No thank you. This one I can leave this little lens on and just use that for video, and at 28mm it's a great all-rounder sort of compromisey lens that will do everything for me. So I'm very pleased with that, and I just thought I'd show you through it. The idea of these handles, of course, I've spoken about previously, but it gives you 2 pieces of equipment you can hold onto to steady. You can put your elbows into your ribs to get a bit of like a tripod effect if you're doing just some still work where you're not having to follow around. But when you do want to move, you can move around as freely as you like and film, and it's just great comfort. Another little feature I didn't mention, I think, in my last video that is interesting, you'll see these little buttons on top of the handles. You might think, what's these buttons for? What do they do? Well, I'll show you. It's quite an interesting feature. See here, you can turn them, and you know, you can match them. So sometimes it's very handy to have the handles at different angles, depending on what you're doing. So if you're coming up here and you're filming up high over the top of someone, see how you can make them comfortable for you to hold, and it's actually the camera that turns. So isn't that a very clever idea? You just squeeze the button and it turns in any angle you want and it locks into position. Once you let go of that button, it just completely locks and they won't move at all. So you don't have to fear that they're going to come off and drop the camera on you. They don't. They always stay connected. It's just what angle they happen to be on. So this idea of to be able to turn them in any position you want, I think that's a great feature. So I just thought I'd show you through that. Now, am I actually loving the Z9 for video? Well, I tell you what, it is heavy, I'll grant you that, but its performance is astounding. You're never worried about whether your video is in focus or not. It's always going to be in focus, it's always going to be sharp, and it's always going to perform really well. And the good battery life of that big battery in the Z9 makes a massive difference when you're doing video, because video does really suck the battery power. Now, of course, you could take a few other batteries with you if you like, but my workaround of that is actually to use a battery pack. So I have a battery pack in that camera bag if I want it, and a power cable. And if I'm thinking the battery's getting low, rather than swap batteries, I just plug in the external power unit and I can run with that battery block in my camera bag all day or 2 days. It'll last me so long. So it's a great option to have that power pack with you, particularly with something like a Z9 that is quite chewy through the battery power. So other than that, I just wanted to say I've got demonstrations to show you that it does work very well online. Just please go onto my site, my YouTube channel, and you will see all the photos that I've been taking and the videos, and you'll see exactly how that all operates. So the Z9 I'm loving. This little lens is a godsend. I can't wait to use it a lot out and about and have the compactness and convenience of it. I've had it before, as I say, in the past with the ZFC. It performed faultlessly there. I have no reason it won't continue to do so. And I do love the look of it. The little bit of retro styling is very cute. The other lens they provide also is the 40mm, and I have commented on the 40mm f2 before and saying that even though the concept of it is wonderful, the reality is it is very soft at f2. So they're selling it as a f2 lens, like a wide prime, but at f2 it actually is terrible. It's very soft. It's just soft and looks slightly out of focus. So it could be usable to some, but to me, I knew it was soft and that was just irritating me. As soon as you go up to f2.8 or f4, it's sharp again and it's great. But at that time, it was just that little bit annoying. So anyway, I've got rid of the 40mm, didn't like it. I have plenty of other lenses to choose from, so I'm not crying in my soup, that's just fine. I will also mention while I've got it here, that I have in my hand here the Sigma. This is the 150mm to 600mm lens. It's a long zoom. When you start to zoom it out, if I just unlock it so I can, you can see it zooms out quite a long way to 600mm, and when you retract it in, it's at 150. You can lock it. It has a locking button. So a locking button just means that it doesn't come out when you don't want it to. It's always staying connected together. But I would like to say about this lens and my experience with it that it is actually fantastic. It's a great value for money package. So is the Nikon 180 to 600 better? I think it is better. I think it's better because it has internal zooming, and I think it's better because it's got the Nikon Z quality arrangement. So I think that's actually a better lens. But it's also cost 3 times what this one costs, and do I really notice the difference? Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I mean, I'm considering upgrading to the Nikon one just because it is the Nikon one really, and having a Z mount lens is always great. But at the same time, I'm really not feeling I'm compromising in any way at all with this lens. This Sigma is great value for money if you do only spasmodic, occasional wildlife and sports action photography or video. It's a terrific value for money purchase. So if you're looking for a bargain and you don't take your shooting that seriously, it's not professional grade, that is actually a very good unit and more than sharp enough and functional enough. And of course, complemented with the Z9 and the great autofocus you have on that, you can't lose. And of course, I'll show you some sample photos I've taken with that lens and the Z9 camera, and you'll be surprised how great the results are. So it cost me only $1,000 Australian to buy it second-hand on eBay. I think that's the best bargain lens I've ever bought, to be honest with you. It was a great bargain, and I was very happy with my purchase. So, in summary, just saying I love the idea of the ZF. I don't think I'll purchase it, but it does give a promise of things to come in the future for the Z6 Mark III, so that's exciting. I'm loving the Z9. I'm loving all the Sigma lenses. They're all working well with the adapters. I'm having no issues with them. So if you're looking for a bargain, something cheap and second-hand that you can pick up relatively with little money spent, they're a real serious option. Do I still have Nikon lenses? Yes, you've just noticed I've even bought one just recently again, another Nikon Z lens. And I have several still. So I'm loving the Nikon Z lenses. They just generally are a little bit more expensive. So I recommend really shop around and get them secondhand on eBay. Someone's traded something in for something else, and sometimes you can pick up a great bargain if you're at the right spot at the right time. So happy purchasing. I hope you have some beautiful photography time out there. And again, anything you want to ask me about, feel free to talk. I always love to chat afterwards about various camera products, and that doesn't have to be exclusively Nikon. So thank you once again for your patience and time with me. I hope you have a great evening. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.